Hello friends! Thank you so much for joining me today. Welcome to my channel. My channel is completely devoted to everything memory keeping, so be sure to click that subscribe button so you don't miss my weekly videos. Today I'm going to be working with Tim Holtz Distress Crayons, which if you haven't worked with them before, they are a kind of a hybrid between a gelato, watercolor, and pigment ink all in one. And I'm going to be using them to create a background for my photo, which is also going to be a pocket page. So I'm starting out by prepping my page with clear gesso, which is just basically a primer that's going to allow the cardstock to absorb more water and more product. The story that I am documenting today is about all of the amazing housewarming gifts and cards and kind words that we received when we moved into our house, and just how grateful I am for that. So my idea is to create sort of a sunburst pattern in rainbow colors around my photo, which will also be a pocket. So the method I'm using, I'm taking a piece of plastic wrapping, and you want it to be a little thicker than just cellophane, but any plastic wrapping that's a little bit firmer will do. So I'm marking my triangle shapes that are going to serve as my sunburst pattern onto the cellophane, and then putting some water on top of it. And this is going to allow these crayons to do what makes them so cool, which is kind of give you a watercolor pattern when they're mixed with water, but they're still really, really bright because they're a pigment. They're very pigmented, and so even adding water is not going to lose the vividness of the shade. The other thing that sets them apart from just traditional watercolor is that they dry, and adding more water is not going to reactivate them. So they are set, which is a good thing. Partially. It can be a good thing or a bad thing. It's sort of a double-edged sword. So I knew time was running out, and it wasn't quite the perfect shape that I wanted, and it's not going to be. I mean, I knew it was going to be messy, but it was a little more messy than I thought it was going to be, and you'll see it gets even more messy as we go along. But I kind of used some water to guide it, so you can do that while there's still moisture on the page, and then once it dries, it is set. So I wanted to do sort of a gradual rainbow pattern. So I used more of the red but mixed it in with the orange color. And what I should have done, and this is a lesson for next time, is wiped it off each time because it was accumulating more and more moisture, which made the triangles become increasingly messy, which was fine. I wanted them to be messy, but I probably would have preferred them to be a little bit cleaner, especially the more I put on the page. So lesson, don't do what I did. Clean off the cellophane before you apply the next shape. But the other thing that's cool about them not reactivating with additional water is once they are dried and you put another shade on top of them, they're not going to mix together. So you're going to get a clear layer of color rather than blending between the two. If you want to blend them, then just put the next layer on when the first layer is still wet so that they will kind of blend together. They dry pretty quickly, so even from the time it took me to put one triangle down to the next triangle down, they were pretty much dry. So you can see that it's moving around a little bit, but not very much. Not as much as I really wanted them to, because I wanted to clean up those lines. So I quickly realized that I just kind of had to embrace the messiness and just let it be. So I do like the messy edges, and one thing that's cool about these crayons is when they do dry, the line of where the pigment color ends is very, very bright. A lot brighter than it would be with watercolor, unless you're using a lot of watercolor paint. This yellow triangle gets really wonky, and it's because I used way too much water. The amount of water I used on the first two triangles is about right, and I started adding just way too much water toward the end, and it just makes the shape go everywhere and just kind of run all around, which is fine for an abstract background, which is the only thing I've ever used them for. But to try to make a more precise shape, which is what I was trying to do for the first time here, it was just a little bit too much. The best thing to do is just use a tiny bit of water, otherwise it's going to kind of run everywhere. I do want to try this method again, trying to do a little bit more of a precise shape and just kind of go use the lessons that I learned from this, which is not to use as much water. And I think it would look cool to do like a messy circles layout where you could put journaling, photos, and embellishments in the different messy circles. So that's what I think I'm going to try next. But again, I'm just kind of embracing the mess on this one. So to kind of clean up the lines, I wanted to stamp on top of these triangles. I love stamping on top of watercolor, and these are even more fun than stamping on watercolor because they're so bright behind the stamp. The set that I'm using is by Ali Edwards. It's the Story Stamp, and the set is called Design, and it came with, I think, 6 different triangles that all have different patterns in them, and they're really fun. I kind of forget about them, but there's so much that you could do with them. I also want to try doing like a bunting banner across the page with them. There's a lot of different options with this stamp set. It's very cool. And I also just saw in the December Daily product release that there's going to be another triangle stamp set that's going to be released with December Daily. So even more options. I think from what I could see in the video, I think there might be a bigger size than these triangles. So cool to have options. So I sped this way up because it did take kind of a while to stamp all the different designs. And what I was trying to do is just mix it up a little bit and make sure that no 2 triangles next to each other were the same pattern. In the middle there, it got really messy, as you can see, but I didn't really care because it's going to be covered by my photo. So the paper that I'm using is by Vicki Boutin, and it's the 6x8 paper pad that I just got from scrapbook.com. It is really fun, and I thought the colors would bode well with this. So I was looking through the booklet and just pulling out some pattern papers that I thought would look good and match, and I just wanted to layer up the photo a little bit to give it some dimension and make it stand out from the rainbow pattern a little bit more. This paper pad by Vicki Boutin is called the Color Kaleidoscope collection, and it's really fun. I've used a ton of it, and all of the pages are just so bright and vibrant. And I really like, this is the first time I've ever purchased a 6x8 paper pad, but it's wonderful for layering. I always feel bad if I don't use a full 12x12 page, which I almost never do. So it's nice to have pattern paper in a smaller size, especially when it's really bold, because if it's a super bold pattern, odds are I'm probably not going to use the full 12x12 in one sitting. So it's kind of nice. It alleviates my waste guilt. So now that I've gotten all of the patterns picked out that I want to go on this little pocket, I just double checked the size to make sure that my biggest card is going to fit into it as a pocket. And then I'm just sticking it down with roller tape so that those stick out just a little bit, just to kind of, I guess, blend or make it look a little bit more cohesive from where the photo and pocket starts to where the paint and stamping begin, and also to kind of hide some of the parts that I just didn't really like that much. So now we're going over to my sewing machine because I wanted to have a little bit of stitching to add some more dimension, and I also just really like a stitched pocket. If I tape or glue down a pocket, a lot of times it just gets a little bit sticky, and when I'm pulling the cards or whatever out of the pocket, sometimes it's not as seamless. So I really like to do a stitched pocket whenever possible, and this is definitely sped up. I'm a super slow and not a great seamstress, but one thing I do remember from home ec is to do like the reverse stitching, and it does kind of make it a little bit more secure. So I'm making just a super simple, messy journaling card because no one's going to see it. It's going to go inside the journaling pocket, but I just wanted to write my reflections about just how grateful I was for all of these gifts, and I wanted to sort of pin them all together. So the card in the upper left is, they're all beautiful, but this card was made by my sister-in-law. She is an incredible calligrapher and wedding stationery creator. You all should check her out. If I could learn to letter and do calligraphy like this, my scrapbooking game would be so much better. So I am just stabbing these cards, putting them all together, and paper clipping them together just kind of helps keep that whole together. I don't have a paper piercer, so I'm just using a thumbtack. And I'm using a little cute heart-shaped brad that I got from my local craft store to hold it all together. And then that way they're all in there, but I can still read all of the cards that I got, plus my journaling card with my reflections about how they all made me feel. So I'm gonna put an Avery index tab on the top of my little card bundle there. So I stamped using my this Ali Edwards stamp that has a lot of sentiments that fit perfectly on an Avery index card. So I use that a lot actually. And the sentiment I picked says "so much love" because it just seemed very appropriate. And it also signifies, one, that it's a pocket when I look back later, and gives it a little bit of a place where you can pull the cards out of, gives you a little handle. So this next part I have a lot of mixed feelings about. I wish I had just stopped there, but I'm showing you the whole thing, even though I really wish I could just edit, undo the stamping that I did. So I wanted to write "Home So Warm," which I love that sentiment, but I just hate how it turned out. I still might go back and, I don't know, put some white out over it and restamp or do something. I don't like how that turned out at all, but my remedy to try to make up for it was to put these hearts on there. They're by Ali Edwards and Studio Calico. Love these hearts, and they did kind of take the focus off of that stamping, which I really just hated. And then I mounted it onto a piece of pattern paper from Studio Calico. It's kind of a blue color that wasn't exactly in the layout, but it matched and coordinated pretty well, and I liked how it turned out. So that is it. That is the full layout. I hope you guys enjoyed this process video, even though I did not love how the stamping turned out and wish I could undo that. But overall, it was just super fun working with the distress crayons. And if you did like this video, please give it a thumbs up. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you on the next video.